Hey guys, and welcome to the Igloo, and today we're going to be showing off two of the best weapons for the heavy machine gun category in Fallout 76. So we're going to get right into it. So we actually have this one, which is an actually nice 50 cal two-shot explosive, non-prime version, which is very effective. And then you also have the prime version of the Gatling. Now again, don't worry about the fire rates on the Gatling, because you got to remember, one's hand cranked and then the other one is actually a pure automatic. So with the fire rate of the 50 cal regular two-shot explosive, you do about 689 damage and then about a fire rate of 91. And then for the Gatling Prime, you have a 400 fire rate with a 1468 damage. This will change later when we do receiver changeouts and a couple other things. So when you're going to be having for your best kind of combination that I think for each weapon would be, but I'm still going to be showing off other things for it as well, is that you should have at least martial artists 2 or 3 for the Gatling, because it can crank out even faster. And if you have a faster reload speed on top of that you actually get lucky for with a Gatling, that's beautiful. It's so effective with that. When it comes to the actual setup for it, the Prime is good, but you have to at least have Martial Arts 3, because that fire rate that's slightly slower will affect the weapon itself. So getting into for the best mods for the 50 cal. Now this will vary. Like I said in the other 50 cal video that I also put up, that this is actually a very viable weapon, both non-prime and prime, but you always have to have the heavy barrel onto it, because there's only 2 different actual plans that you can actually learn for this kind of weapon, and that is the heavy barrel and the prime. There's no going back once you prime it though, by the way, so I would highly recommend not to if you like to use the regular ammo and not just burn through some really expensive violet like stable flux ammo that you would really need to get your hands onto. So with the fire rates actually specified and everything else, when you're actually putting your cards up, again, you're going to need at least martial artists 2 or 3 for the Gatling in order for you to actually maximize and optimize that kind of build for that type of heavy, versus the other 50 cal where it does not require to have martial artists, and it actually is still a very viable weapon. Again, when you're in a group, everything else will vary in extremes based on your mutations, based on your perk cards that you're sharing, based on if you have strange numbers and how many mutations that you have. There's a lot of factors when it comes into mutations alone. So I'm going to only specify this in a solo category for most people, for like just having the right amount of stuff for everything. So when you're seeing the fire rate and actually killing as much as you humanly possibly can, this is one of the easiest weapons for both categories in the heavy set. Now this is why that this mashup has actually happened in the first place, because the Gatling is very effective and very cheap for ammo conservation compared to its other brother, which is Mini. Not as viable as the actual Mini one. Okay, the viability of actually just pelting carpet bombing is made for another specific use case, compared to the Gatling, where it will hit you like a truck and it behaves more like just a rifle than it does a machine gun, especially if you don't have martial artists 2 or 3. So with that, when I'm actually doing some queen killing, as you're going to be seeing on screen, both are extremely effective with DPS categories. And when you're actually pelting it as much as possible, this is the best for actual in the air queen killing, because you can actually be hitting like a truck at the actual fly points of it actually flying around. Now the 50 cal is also still as viable as the Gatling, but you also have to think and factor in for spread. So if you're not going to be using intelligence and not being in power armor, that would not be as effective as the actual Gatling would be without having power armor, because without power armor, the Gatling rules overall. But in power armor, it is slightly different when you're considering the perk Stabilized. The perk Stabilized is actually be able to narrow your grouping gap so that you can actually fire within a very good, like, spherical radius that the game would actually provide compared to what you would not do without the actual power armor. This is why I would recommend, if you like to not be in power armor, I would recommend the Gatling. But if you like to be in power armor and you like to just put as much rounds down range as humanly possible, I would recommend the 50 cal in power armor with full min-max as well, because again, to take advantage of all the damage and for what you're going to be able to see, this is a quarter health with these weapons with Unyielding. This is half health with these weapons with Unyielding, and then this is min-maxed with each weapon at Unyielding armor. So again, it very well depends on how you build this kind of setup, how you actually put different pieces on, and how you can actually take the damage compared to everything else. Now we're going to show some slow-mo footage of actually shooting each of these weapons in particular and how they actually spread both ways. Okay, so now we also have the other factor, which is the ammo cost. For the actual 5mm, it has 15 lead and 30 steel. And it really doesn't matter with gunpowder because you can either make it, farm it off of super mutants, or getting a bunch of other setups done. Now, same thing with the Prime. The only thing that is with the Prime is that it costs 1 Violet Stable Flux and 1 Ultra Sight. Going to the 50 cal, it's going to cost you 40 steel, and it's going to cost you 10 lead. That's the biggest numbers that you can actually have in this game. It's very expensive. Just like I mentioned in the other videos, it's extremely expensive whenever you're actually putting as much stuff as you can possibly put downrange. And it's not cheap. Even with Super Duper and just the ammo card that's in agility, it's extremely expensive for both of these categories. Now, what I would honestly recommend is that if you're doing queen killing, like I normally put for most of my videos, is that you would have the Gatling primed, because you're going to be hitting it in the air, and you're going to be having constant damage when it's in the air, because that's what you're connecting with, compared to if you were doing a 50 cal, because the 50 cal would have a higher spread and there's no way of going back. So personally, having a regular 50 cal is what I would honestly recommend versus the actual Prime Gatling, where you can change it to a speedy receiver. So immediately after you're done queen killing, you can actually change your receiver back to actually being a very viable weapon in itself. It's completely and utterly, unbelievably good. And this is why this is one of the best combos that you can have, is with the Gatling gun versus the actual 50 cal. Now, as a slight recap, again, this is going to vary based on your build. But in my personal opinion, for what I've seen and for what I've experienced with, the Gatling rules overall against the 50 cal because it has a few different factors. It's more flexible when it comes to most builds. Also, on top of it, it has the ability to go faster and fire faster with hard-hitting rounds and cheap rounds, if that. Especially because 5mm versus its other cousin, the Mini, will just ammo dump round after round after round, and it's going to get very expensive with the Mini. Now, the Mini is still good. It's only just, it's not as good as the Gatling because you can hit like a truck. If you guys like this content, please leave a like, leave a comment down below. I put a lot of time and effort into this so that I can actually show you guys exactly what would be the better build for you guys. And personally, like I said, the Gatling would be better for me, and it would be better for most people, except for unless you're in power armor and you can actually connect more rounds, because that's the whole thing, is the spread. And that's what really screws up with most people, is the spread of the actual 50 cal. Still nice, but it's still a spread. All right, have a good one, guys. Thank you so much. If you really like it, down below, please put a Patreon, because if you really like supporting my channel, I mean, I'm only working my ass off for all these videos. So have a good one, guys.
Which team is gonna do? Oh, nauseating just died for some reason. Give me a second, buddy. I'm coming. Or Stone's got you. Nux and nauseating. You want to do the silo with me?
What's going on over here?
Brotherhood gathering.
Brotherhood gathering.
Huh?
Brotherhood of Steel gathering.
Ah, that's fucking gross, dude.
Yeah.
Just want to let you all know that your disgusting status. And I hope you get what's coming to you.
It's not my problem that you're sad with your life, man.
Yeah. You have that sorry, ugly ass armor on too.
If we shoot this guy
Yeah,
all at
right.
the same time, he wouldn't survive this flashlight.
Nothing is no way.